Welcome to the OJT series of training videos meant to educate and guide you in the new ECMS format. This video will demonstrate how to complete and submit the trainee enrollment form, formerly known as the EO364. The function of the screens in ECMS is identical, although the appearance is obviously a little different. I'm going to assume that the user has a passing knowledge of standard functionality in ECMS. I'll be using the same project and prime contractor as was used in the EO363 worksheet video. To begin, I'm going to log in as the prime contractor for this project. On the blue toolbar, select Construction Projects, enter my project number, and I'll be taken to the Project Information screen. From here, I'm going to navigate to the OJT Trainee Enrollment EO364 link under the Construct column. Clicking on that will bring me into my Trainee Enrollment EO364 list. To create a new EO364, I simply navigate to the gray toolbar and click New. From here, I simply need to select one of the apprentices that I had entered on the EO363. Anything entered on an approved EO363 will populate here. If there's someone here that you expect to see and they're not present, the EO363 will need to be revised. Please see the EO363 video to see how that can be accomplished. To carry forward though, I'm going to select my Carpenter Apprentice. Once I do that, this will open up the OJT Trainee Enrollment EO364 screen. As you can see, there are quite a few fields present that need to be completed. This should be similar to the documents you completed before, but obviously this will be taking a different format. Rather than enter everything real time, I'm going to take a break, enter the information, then come back and explain it. Welcome back. As you can see, I've already populated many of the fields in the Trainee Candidate Information section and the Contractor Information section as well. But before we move on to the Training Information section, I'd like to touch on some of the fields. We can see that our trainee status is in draft as expected. We also have multiple fields that are highlighted in yellow and have a yellow flag, indicating that they are required fields for form submission. The first two are simple enough. It's the first and last name of our candidate. We also have gender of the candidate, as well as race and ethnicity. Phone number is not required, but the address line, including city, state, and zip code, is required. Phone number, of course, does not hurt. You'll notice something else here that's not highlighted as a required field, but could be critical depending on the history of the candidate. Right here it says any other names used, including maiden name. If so, list below. And that could be if the candidate goes by different names, or if perhaps they've had some experience in the program before, whether it was for a different apprenticeship, a different contractor, or just a little experience with the people they're currently being registered for. If that's the case, you want to list the first name, initial, last name, and suffix. The more detail that can be provided, the better. We also have contractor information here. You'll notice that the training provider, prime contractor, is all automatically locked in. The rest of the information, including the contact name, project field officer contact name, and a host of other information, is required. Now, these aren't marked as yellow, but you will be flagged if you try to save or submit the form without them. It includes multiple emails and multiple phone numbers. Remember, the OJT program is very important, and people need to be contacted if necessary. The next section that we're going to look at is the Training Information section. You'll notice that because we selected Carpenter Apprenticeship, it's automatically locked in here, as is the 1,000 hours that is standard with the program. Now, the very first drop-down you'll see is training position being filled by, and we have multiple options. We're going to go with apprentice, but if you were to pick other, you'll notice that we need to identify the candidate's current status. Basically, if we choose other, this field now becomes required. Now, if we select OJT, you'll notice that the wage rate identification in the next section becomes very simplified. We have prevailing rate minimum labor 1, we would fill in our hourly rate and fringe benefit, and then the trainee hourly rate and fringe benefit, which would be the same. But we're going to be going with apprentice for this example. And you'll notice that a lot of apprenticeship information opens up down here in the wage rate identification section. Something else that's going to determine whether or not multiple fields are added is union membership. We're going to say for this example that our apprentice is non-union, but notice if I select yes, we have the name of union, union membership began date, and new sponsored employee journeyman, yes or no, if we select union member. And like I said, in this case, we're going to select no, and those three fields will disappear. Next, we have trainee has any experience in the proposed training classification. We're going to select no, but if we select yes, we would follow over to the next column, and it says, if yes, please explain. Most of the apprentices that are coming into this program are expected to have no training. So if they do, we simply want to know what that entails. In this case, we're going to select no. Another drop-down, upgrade current employee. Again, this should be a no, but if it is a yes, make sure you follow over current employee's work classification. That will need to be entered if you have yes. In this case, we're going to select no. Now, apprenticeship construction classification, in this case, will be carpenter. Anticipated start date, we're simply going to pick a date in the near future. Apprenticeship hours already completed. Again, this should be 0, but if it's more than 0, you need to supply qualifying information and or contact your district BEO representative. And while I'm going over some of the basics for filling out this form, keep in mind there are many different options and many different rules that will apply depending on the nature of the employee that's entering the program. And while the EO364 form does contain a lot of helpful information, if you ever need to qualify information or have questions answered, please contact your district BEO representative. Now that being said, I'm going to hit my save, and that'll lock in this information that I've entered here. Now the final section we want to identify is the wage rate identification section. You'll notice that some of these fields have a yellow flag, but do not have the yellow shading. They are still required for form submission, however. Now, the question might be, how do we determine what is a proper wage rate for this position and/or apprenticeship? If that's the question, it can be answered in one of three ways. If it's a federal project, you'll have Davis-Bacon wage rate schedules attached on the Project Development Checklist, or PDC. If it's a 100% state project, you will also have L&I wage rate schedules attached in the PDC. Or if this person is a union member, you may obtain the proper wage rate from their union shop. Those would be the three most likely sources for this information, although again, if you're unsure or have questions, please contact your district BEO representative. Now to continue, we're going to fill in some information in these fields. You'll notice the first thing we need to address is prevailing rate minimum for a laborer class 1. I'm just going to plug in generic information because ultimately this will depend on county and a few other factors. So I don't know if this information is correct, but it will suit our purposes for an example. We also have apprenticeship program name, apprenticeship program wage rate scale, an apprentice's experience level / time, in this case 0 hours. We also have an hourly rate per skill level. Again, I'm just going to be entering generic information. And regardless of what we select as far as training position being filled by, whether we go with apprentice, other, OJT, regardless, we have to fill in the journey person hourly rate for that construction craft. And then down here we have training program classification, carpenter apprenticeship, trainee hourly rate. And again, a lot of this information will look the same, and that's okay. Now you'll notice once we enter the hourly rate and the fringe benefit, that will give our trainee total pay. So we're going to come up here, select save, and of course if we had any errors, they would present up here. But we got the information was saved successfully message, which means we're good to go. And again, as I was saying, a lot of the information in here is going to be very repetitive, but trust me, it is required for submission of the form. Once all that information has been entered, we have another step, and this one is probably easily missed, but very important. Once all the information has been entered and saved, we want to go down to this gray button that says Print as PDF. Now in the past, the EO364 form needed a signature, and that's what this is going to provide us. So once we click on that, we'll have the option of opening or saving or canceling. In this case, we want to open. And all this is a PDF representation of all the information we just entered. Of course, we have our project information, trainee candidate information, contractor information, training information, and our wage rate identification. We also have a trainee declaration that says, by my signature, I attest to the following. I have received, read, and understand the terms and conditions of my employment and a copy of this training program. Furthermore, I understand that the purpose of the training program and can comply with all conditions set forth in the program. I further state that my signature here indicates that I have not completed a training program in this classification, nor have I been listed as a journey person in this classification on any contractor's payroll, and/or I have not been successfully employed in the classification for which I am now being considered. Their name will automatically be printed from the form that the information was entered, but they will have to signature and date. And the other nice thing about this form is all the information that follows that signature and date. We have training special provision item number, a description, and we also have instructions for completing the EO364, either printed or typed. Now obviously, this is all going to be typed information since it's being entered in ECMS, but if you have any questions, you can always hit that print PDF button and it will bring up this form even if it's not complete, okay? So that's important, and that's a handy tip. And again, of course, you can always contact your district BEO representative. Now, one thing I want to stress, if a contractor hits this print PDF button, prints out the PDF, and again, you do actually have to print this PDF to have it signed and dated by the candidate. If you notice that something on this form is not correct, or you somehow left out something, maybe right here, or any of these other fields, current employee, work classification, etc., you might be tempted to write it in. Okay, now that the PDF has already been printed, it would be easy to simply write it in and have the candidate sign it. The only problem is if it's written in here, even though we're going to attach this form, that information will not show up in our database. So if upon printing this PDF, you realize that there is a mistake and/or missing information, please close or discard the PDF. Go back to the EO364 screen as found in ECMS and correct and/or add the information at that point. That's very important. Once your candidate has signed and dated this form, you'll need to scan it back into your system and then hit File, Save As, and save a copy for attaching later. Once that's done, you can close out this screen, and you'll want to go down to the Attachments section. So for attachment title, I'm going to put in EO364 signed. And again, you don't have to put in that specific title, but whatever we type in here, obviously we want this to be a clear indication of what is contained within that particular attachment. Now over here under document type, we're going to go down and hit Sign Trainee Enrollment 364. We're going to hit our Browse button, and we're going to find the file in question and attach it. In this case, EO364 Signature Attachment. Once that's there, I hit Save. And this attachment now shows up down below. Now you may have noticed when I hit the document type dropdown that there were other categories here as well. And that's because in addition to the signed trainee enrollment form, every submission must also have a training outline form attached, which you would do in the attachment section. And for apprentices in particular, there are also 4 additional forms that must be attached. The first one is indenture papers, also known as rapids, and current experience, current wage rates, and fringe benefit papers as well. And again, those should all be attached in the attachment section in a similar manner to our EO364. We also have a generic category called justification, and this is for any other attachments that you may feel are relevant or that your BEO representative said that they need to see. Now you might be asking, what happens if I accidentally submit this without one of those attachments? So if I submit without any of those attachments, you'll notice that I get quite a few errors saying that those attachments must be here. And again, you'll notice that we have our training outline, apprenticeship current experience, rates, and benefits. So I'm going to take a break, attach those, and I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. You'll notice that due to our error message from before, I have now attached all of the relevant attachments required for this form submission. We have our experience, wage rate, fringe, we have our rapids, a training outline, and I even attached an additional document under the justification document type just to show that the system can in fact hold all of these at once. So with that being said, again, I click on Save. I always click on Save. I go to Workflow, hit Submit, read the message from web page. Again, make sure I understand everything that's being said here, and if I have no issues or objections, I click on OK. And you'll notice that our trainee status has gone from draft to ACE IIC review. This concludes the completion of the form and the initial submission. I'll now log out as the contractor and log in as the next step of the form approval. Thank you. I'm now logged in as the IIC. I could go through the project information screen to get to the EO364 in question, but it's easier to use the work queue. I simply click on the work queue, scroll down under Express Searches to OJT, Trainee Enrollment Review EO364, and click on that link. From here, I'm presented with a list of projects that fall under that classification. I simply find the project of interest, select that link, and it will bring me into the EO364 previously submitted by the contractor. All the information entered is available for my review. I can't enter or edit anything, but I can open the attachments that the contractor included herein. Simply click on the attachment, hit open. I can review the information and then close out when finished. From here, the only thing left is to go to Workflow and either select Approve or I can send it back for revision. In this case, I'm going to approve. I simply click on Approve, hit OK, and you'll notice that our status has gone from IIC Review to DLCCA Review. I'm now going to log out as the IIC and log in as the DLCCA rep. And our status goes from DLCCA Review to BEO Review. I'll now log out as the DLCCA and log in as the BEO rep. I'm now logged in as the DLCCA for the project. Similar to the IIC review step before, simply go to your work queue, down to your EO364 Express Search, click on the project, and you'll be taken into the EO364. Identical to the IIC, we have all the information available for review, but we cannot edit the information or add anything additional. Of course, we can open any attached documents, review them, and then close back out. At this point, I simply hit Workflow, either Approve or Revise. In this case, we'll use Approve. Hit OK, and our status goes from DLCCA Review to BEO Review. I'll now log out as the DLCCA and log in as the BEO rep. I'm now logged in as a representative from BEO. Similar to the prior two review steps, I'm going to select Work Queue, go down to EO364 in my Express Searches, and select the project from the list presented. This will bring me into my EO364 screen, something we're all familiar with by now. But you'll notice, as opposed to the prior two steps where the information was presented, but all I could do was review the information and open and close documents, and of course do my workflow for approve or revise, the BEO has two additional steps where they will actually have to edit the information. In this case, if the last name of our trainee, which is Doe, matches any last name of other trainees in the system already, in the gray toolbar, an Associate Trainee button will appear. If we click that, this will bring up all the other candidates who have the last name Doe. It is the BEO's rep to figure out which candidate is applicable here and select them. In this case, this person has already been approved for another project. If we look at the second line, we see it's John Doe and it's for our project, and as it's still pending approval, we can be pretty sure that this is our person. So we're going to select them, and we also have a BEO approved start date. In this case, I'm going to select April 19th, and at this point I can workflow and either approve or revise. Now, if I wanted to revise, of course, that's a negative workflow action, so I would have to put in workflow comments before hitting workflow revise. But in this case, let's say I'm satisfied with all the information that's been entered, so I'm going to workflow and approve. If I click on OK, you'll notice that our trainee status has gone from BEO review to approved. This EO364 is now approved in the system. And of course, an EO364 will have to be completed for every candidate on the project. The quickest way to determine how many people are eligible for a 364 on a project is to review those candidates who were submitted on the EO363. One other thing before we exit this training is the creation of a trainee number. Now, when this candidate was being submitted on a 364, this was the first time that was happening for that particular candidate, so the trainee number was blank. Now that they've been approved, you'll notice that a trainee number has been created for this individual. And even in the step before, when I used the Associate Trainee button as found on the gray toolbar, you'll notice that James Doe, who was the other potential match, already had a trainee number. Trainee numbers are very important in the project and in the system as a whole. What they allow us to do is track these particular trainees. It also helps with security and to prevent fraud, either accidental or intentional. So the training number is very critical, and when a BEO, or really any review officer, is attempting to match this person with someone in the system, the best way is to use that trainee number. This concludes the training on the EO364 form.